once you start being a junior or a sophomore, junior year, start thinking, what's my plan beyond sports? There's hitting them with I'm going to transfer, maybe have a conversation with them about what's bothering you and do it rather sooner than later to us. And we try to support them as much as we can. At certain schools, we cannot change the complete setup. Some schools just have a setup and that's how it's going to be. And we can try to maneuver it, but maybe not in a perfect way. But this is a big advice for athletes that are unhappy in certain situations before you think about transferring, because transferring might be tempting, but a transfer comes with change, and change can be good, but it can also be bad. Experience it firsthand and traveling to these countries, meeting these people, talking to these people, that was pretty eye-opening to me, to be honest. I traveled to Nigeria, I saw how people lived and trained, and the story of Ajay commuting 3 hours to practice every single day and 3 hours there and 3 hours home. I was like, what the heck? Like, people do that, and he still runs 10.2. How is that even possible? Get that guy to the US, he's going to run sub 10. Guess what? He just did. That was the idea that we had at the time.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to yet another exciting episode of Beyond the Finish Line with Star, where athleticism meets inspiration, a safe space where athletes come to share their untold stories, humble beginnings, setbacks, and how they overcame, diving into intersections of sport, lifestyle, and personal growth. And as you know, I am your host, Star Mpama. This episode is one that would be informative and educative. So I would advise that if you are a student athlete, please make sure you have your pen and paper. And you can also drop your questions in the comment section by the end of this episode. Now, today's guest happened to be a multiple-time national winner. He is the head of track and field at ScholarBook. He is none other than Mr. Philipp Baar.
We're okay now.
Hello, Mr. Philipp. How you doing? How are
Doing
you
well.
doing? Good day. How is Berlin, Germany?
Yeah, so far so good. It's been a beautiful day. We have nice springtime here in Germany at the moment. So we're just enjoying the outdoors. As you know, I love to go fishing. I love to be on my boat when I have free time and I'm not dealing with lots of athletes and coaches. So it's the right time of the year for that.
Can imagine. So it's amazing. Thank you for accepting to do this, having the international students in the United States. It's really an honor. Without wasting much of anybody's time, let's dive into the untold stories of Mr. Philipp. Let's start from East Germany, where it all began. Track and field, you growing up as a child and how your journey for track and field started, then proceeding into college and scholar.
Yeah, where do I start? So I've always been a track and field athlete my whole life. Actually, my first sport that I ever did was football, like I think most young boys do at some point, but I wasn't very good at it. My coach always yelled at me, so I I stopped doing that. And then I joined track and field at 9 years old because my school teacher thought I could run pretty well. So she figured that might be a good idea. I joined the local track club in my hometown, and I did pretty well. I was always doing the best in endurance events. And once I finished elementary school, I was fortunate enough to be admitted to the local sports schools. In East Germany, we have a pretty good remaining school system for athletes. So it's a little bit different setup because you can train during your school time, which is super, super nice. So we have more PE classes, I guess. And during that time, I was able to train and I had good coaching and a nice setup. So that was super nice. So then I graduated high school and it was basically the big question. Okay, I had a really nice experience. I love track and field. I want to keep doing this, but how? And actually about 1 year before I finished high school, I was contacted by some dudes on Facebook that sent me a message saying, hey, why don't you want to get a sports scholarship to the USA? And those guys that did that at the time, they were and still are the founders of ScholarBook. And they were about my age. They were just barely older than me. One guy was Simon. I think he's 4 years older than I am. And then Thomas, the guy who sent me the message, he was just one or 2 years older than I am. And so at first it sounded kind of like, is this real? Does it sound right? Whatever. But I thought, well, doesn't hurt to try. So I signed up with them, and a year later I had a full scholarship to a nice university in Texas. I ended up going there in 2011, and that was how it all started with ScholarBook. Basically, that was my first contact with ScholarBook as a customer, as an athlete myself.
Okay.
And I ran in college for 5.5 years. I did the whole thing, redshirt plus graduate assistant, all of those fun things. I did everything I could to stay as long as I can.
You experienced it all.
Yeah, I did it all. I finished 2016 in December. And fun fact, I graduated December 2016, and I got married December 18, 2016. So the deal was...
Hello, take a chill pill. Wait. 2011, you got in, graduated in 2016, and got married in 2018. So Philip, what's going on?
No. Got married 2 days after I graduated from grad school. So the deal with my in-laws was, first you graduate, then you guys can get married. So it was like, okay, we graduated, 2 days later we got married. Yeah.
Wait, this is interesting. Wait, it will be too early to switch to marriage. I'm going to come back to all of this. Go ahead, please.
So that was 2016. My US American wife and I, we moved to Berlin, because Berlin is a really nice city. I'm not from Berlin originally, so it was, for me also, it was a move. I grew up about 2.5 hours away, so not super far away, but it was a move to a different city. But, we were coming from an international background, and Berlin is super, super international. Lots of people speaking English, lots of expats living here. So it just felt like the right choice. And yeah, I started working first, regular full-time job, corporate banking. I did finance degree, so that's what I started doing at the beginning. I was still running, and I was relatively successful on the national scene, medals at national championships and stuff like that. I was national champion in the half marathon 2017 and finished third in the 5,000 2017 as well. And then I represented Germany at the European Championship 2018, which was one of my career highlights. That was in the marathon by then, so I started progressing towards marathon running. In 2019, I actually was able to sign a contract with Adidas, which was really nice at the time. I joined the professional running team here in Berlin and was able to not do my regular job anymore. So I was able to discontinue my full-time job at the time, and I was able to run professionally for 3 years, from 2019 to 2021, which was about the worst time of anyone being a professional athlete because of the COVID pandemic, and there really wasn't any races. So it wasn't the best timing on that end, but it was still a really, really nice experience, and I still enjoyed it. And during that time, also, I started, I think 2017 or 2018, I started doing meetings for ScholarBook in Berlin and surrounding areas to meet with athletes and to tell them about, the pros and cons of being a collegiate athlete and how ScholarBook can help them doing that and all of that. So I guess, kind of recruiting / consultations with athletes. And I continued doing that while I was running professionally. So it's not really, I didn't really call it a job, because it was just like meeting with athletes over coffee and, telling them about all the things, but I guess it was a job in a way. And when I discontinued my professional sports career at the end of 2021, there was the opening as the head of the track and field department at ScholarBook. The track and field department at the time, we were 6 people when I took that role. And by now we're over 30, you being one of them, for example. So it's a really, really big team. We've grown a lot, and it's been a crazy journey. It all started, May 2022 is when I started in the role that I am in today. So, and then fast forward, you started with us about 6 months after that. So you've experienced a lot of the craziness and a lot of the things that happened in between. But this was the time that you didn't know about, I guess, or that was before your time.
Wow, Mr. Philip. Wow. Wow. I don't even know where to start. So you were among the first set of staff for ScholarBook, if that's right to say.
Yeah, so I was one of the very, very first athletes, one of the first 20 athletes I later learned, which I had no idea at the time. Like one of the first 20 athletes at ScholarBook ever placed in USA. I had no idea that that was the case. I thought it was like a few hundred already, so I had no idea. And then, I started working with them when they were a bit more mature already. So when I started originally working for ScholarBook, like doing these meetings and stuff, ScholarBook was like 6 or 7 years old. So it wasn't like a baby anymore, but it was maybe an elementary school kid by now. There were things were working well, others were not working well. And with me, obviously the company grew as well. And when I started working for ScholarBook full time in 2022, things were pretty settled by then. So, there was proper processes, proper teams, proper structure. Yeah. But when I was a customer myself, it was like real startup atmosphere, like chaos. No one really knew what was going on. But the company has come a long way since.
Okay, so let's go back to how it all began before we go into what it felt like and the changes that you have made in ScholarBook. Now, being a student athlete or being a German athlete who, after high school, had interest in going into college, coming over to the United States, was that something you envisioned, or you just took the opportunity when it came to you?
Honestly, before... So I had once read an article on the internet, and this was 2010. So articles on the internet weren't what they are today. There was no social media like it is now. You were it was like old school, just journalism. And I read about one German athlete that had gone to the US and was expressing how much he enjoyed doing it. And I thought, oh, wow, this sounds great. This is exactly what I'm doing right now at my school. I get to train at a certain time, and then I get to study at a certain time. And this is what I would love to continue doing. I came from a family where I wasn't missing anything. I had proper clothes and I had proper food and everything was fine. But also my parents were not wealthy enough for me to pay for if I moved out and studied in Germany, they were not wealthy enough for me to pay for an apartment, to pay for all of my things. I would just have to work a regular job, like a student job, to pay for all of that. So that would have been difficult to align with sports. How it is being an athlete, how it is to have to work and all of that. It's not that easy. Yeah. So I figured going to the US on a scholarship would be amazing. They would pay for my apartment. They would let me eat in the dining hall. They would pay for my school fees. So this sounded exactly what I wanted to do. And then when these dudes messaged me on Facebook, at first I did this first thing that others would do, is like, I'm going to try to do it on my own. A lot of people try to do that. And then I quickly realized, well, I'm a decent athlete, but I'm not strong enough for everyone to say, heck yeah, let me sign you right now. So it took a little bit more than just messaging 2 or 3 schools. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to work with these guys. They seem to know what they're doing. And I quickly got a few good offers and decided to go to the school where I had the nicest connection to the coach, and I liked the location, and I had a full scholarship. So it just seemed like the right setup for me. And that ended up being Texas A&M University in Corpus Christi. So not the big one in College Station, but a smaller A&M Corpus Christi, which is still a nice, solid Division I school where we had a good team and a nice coach and a nice city and nice climate. For me, it was a really, really good fit at the time, and I really, really enjoyed my time there.
So being a German, was there any cultural shock you faced on getting to the United States, or it was just something that was easy for you to blend in with?
Yes and no. So I think I'm a pretty open person that settles in relatively well in new environments. I've been to a lot of countries, and even before that I had traveled to other European countries, and I've been on my own for a little bit, so I knew kind of how that felt. But still, I was 19 years old, coming to the USA, suddenly everything is in English, coming straight from high school. The biggest thing was probably for me to watch what I'm eating, because, you're away from home the first time, mom's not cooking anymore. So I was just eating garbage, and I was just drinking sodas, eating hot dogs, living the life at the time, but then quickly realized, okay, if I wanted to achieve some things on the track, I'd probably have to stop doing that and probably start being a bit more careful. And then it was also just those standard things that happen to athletes. My grandpa passed away and I couldn't attend the funeral. So it was just those type of things where you're sometimes sitting there in your dorm room and it's just like, man, I wish I was home right now with my family and so forth. But I never really felt real homesickness or whatever. It was just like, hey, I'm here now. This is a great opportunity. I'm in a spot that I like. I have people around me that I like. And so I would say, I don't know, for every 20 days, 20 good days I maybe had one bad day. So it was clear that the pros were definitely outweighing the cons at the time.
But if I may ask, right, in 5 years, you had your degree and your master's. Now, you said you also experienced the having to be a graduate assistant and all of that. Was it you actually wanting to study this far, or you were trying to run fast so you can go pro? So was that your own methodology to hang in there, or you actually wanted it?
Yeah, I really wanted to stay in the States and in the collegiate sports system for as long as I could, and it was a bit of luck also. So in the year that I would have graduated, my coach approached me after cross country and asked me if I would be willing to redshirt one last track season, because we had just been awarded to host the very first conference championship in school history. So we had a brand new track and they were hosting the conference championship. And I was at the time, one of the better guys on the team. So he was asking me if I would redshirt so that I was able to still score points for them in my 5th year. So I had graduated with my bachelor's degree in 4 years, so regular time. And then since I could do another year, I was basically just 1 semester short of finishing my my master's. And so I asked my coach and said, well, I'm going to need an extra semester. Is there anything that you could do to help me out? So he said, yeah, we have a lot of cross-country meets. I'm going to need some help with the cross-country team in the fall and so forth. So then once I ran out of eligibility, he still gave me a graduate assistant position. And my job was mainly just to train with the cross-country team. So I was, a paid training partner. And I helped organize cross-country meets. At my school, we had 3 big cross-country meets in the fall that we would organize. And I just helped him with that, just registration, setting up the course, all of those things, whatever he needed. Through that, I was able to get my master's degree, even for that last semester paid. So that was super, super helpful. And I had never thought that I would be able to get a master's degree, but the opportunity, I really wanted to go for it.
Yeah. For me, I feel that was an amazing move you made there, because having the opportunity to have a master's added to your degree is one I don't think anyone should give up on. So let's fast forward to getting married and becoming a pro athlete. And unfortunately, it had to be 2019 to 2021. And then there was an injury in between. So in these seasons, right, having to have finished with school, had your degree, had your master's, had a proper job, had to drop it because you turned pro. And I mean, you made plans, but unfortunately, it turned out to be the other way around. And ScholarBook came into the picture. So at that point in time, right, what was the switch for you from having a professional job into going into professional, going in as a professional athlete? And the difference between being a student athlete and a pro athlete, is it huge, or it just needs an extra level of discipline and all of that? And how did your marriage now play a role in that?
Yes. I signed my contract at the end of 2018 and then went professional 2019. Unfortunately, like you mentioned as well, I got injured over Christmas 2018. So I started my professional running career with a pretty severe injury. I had like a pretty big injury in my hip, and that also lasted for nearly a year. And then when I was coming back from that injury, suddenly I picked up an Achilles injury. So it just went from bad to worse, and it was just, annoying. And then COVID broke out. So it was just like the first 2 years were just absolute mess. The biggest difference for me at the time was from being a college athlete to being like a working / semi-professional athlete was how much time we spent in training camps. So the moment I went professional, I went for a 3-month training camp, and that was obviously quite long, and being away from, even small, but still from my family, from my wife and so forth. So that wasn't that easy. And again, I was injured at the time, so I couldn't train the way I wanted to, that also pulls you down a little bit. So it was just like, was this the right move and so forth? What led to me, I think, eventually making the most of it was that, I did all my rehab and I did all my alternate training, spent time in the pool, spent time on the bike and so forth. But I also used the time to just do something useful. For example, I opened up a little e-commerce business at the time where I sold products for athletes. I did a lot of reading and just tried to educate myself on a lot of different topics like business and finance and marketing and so forth. So that was my area of study. So I already was interested in it and I had some knowledge on it, but putting these things into real world play was a little bit different. And it was also pretty successful at the time. COVID, all stores were closed. People couldn't go shopping. So selling things on the internet was actually a pretty good thing at the time. And through that, I just had a lot of learning experiences and like I said, started my own business, did all these things. And then I came to a point where I was healthy again. I was running okay again, but I just noticed I didn't have the same spark and the same drive in my last professional year as I had before I got hurt and while I was in college. So, as an athlete, you always need to answer that why question. Why am I doing this? For most people, there's something big behind it. I don't know, winning some medal, representing your national team, or running, winning certain prize or whatever it may be. And I had done more in my career than I ever thought I would do. I never thought I would win a national championship. I never thought I would get to represent Germany. I never thought I could run in the USA, all of those things. So I was not able to answer that why anymore. And that's what I noticed. So when I was running races, even though I was in good shape, when it was really starting to get difficult and you're trying to, push through the pain and dig deeper, I just couldn't do it anymore because I was like, why am I doing this? And I couldn't answer that question.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I came to the realization of like, it's probably time for me to let it go. I did then finish my career. I ran one more race, German Marathon Championships 2021. I got one more bronze medal. By the way, fun fact, the guy who beat me is Tony, who's one of our athlete managers at ScholarBook. So he plays second, I place third. Also worked with a lot of Nigerian athletes. He's also a really good marathon runner. And that was my final race. And after that, I was doing my own business and various things at the time. And about 6 months later, in May 22, this position opened up. And actually, I was just trying to help Simon hire the right next guy. And he wanted a little bit of input from my end because I guess he valued my input. And one morning, he just called me and was like, dude, why don't you just do it? I was like, yeah, maybe, let me think about it. And thought about it, talked to my wife about it, and then we decided, okay, let's give it a try. And then I took the position myself instead of helping to hire the other guy.
So you went from being a freelancer and becoming the guy in the space of 6 months. And not just that, you made a tentative change in ScholarBook. Now, I know that Regina also works in ScholarBook. Were you the push behind that, or she was also passionate about an athlete manager?
Actually, fun fact, she worked at ScholarBook before I did. So she started working at ScholarBook back in, I think actually 2017, because she was in Germany and she didn't speak German at the time. And we were trying to figure out, where could she work and so forth. And since I knew Simon and he was a friend of mine, I said, well, she's very experienced, she's US American and so forth. Maybe this could be an option. And then she started working there. And she was working there for almost the entire time in various things, various positions. And then when I took the position, we were growing so fast in my team that I needed a new athlete manager. And then I asked her if she wanted to do that. And because I know, what she was good at and so forth, and what her background was in her studies and so forth. And then she decided to become part of the team. Yeah. And so, she was actually there before me.
You've been the head of track and field for over 3 years now. What would you say are what I call it, mistakes international students make. You recruit from Africa, from Europe, all around the world, right? And you have dealt with these athletes one-on-one. And sometimes it's like these people are not properly informed. There's this ideology in their head. If we narrow it down to Africa, there's like a particular ideology about America and all of that. And aside from that, getting to the United States, we know like the NCAAs, the times and all of that. And it's like, okay, take me when I come here, I'm going to do better. Some persons get here and these times don't come. Some persons have the times from home. And when they get here, it's like the time disappears. Some people come without anything and they get better. Some people are just good from where they are and they come and they get better. So what are the things you see now with your 3 years working experience? You feel like, okay, this could make a whole lot of change if athletes would do things this way and do things that way and let go of this and let go of that.
Yeah. I personally think the number one reasons why certain athletes are successful and certain athletes are not successful is because it's positive mindset and open-mindedness. So some athletes come to the US and all they say is, this is not how I did it at home. This is not what we did. This is not what I'm used to. And from day one, they never give the new program a chance. And I see that I thought for a long time, I thought this was like a European problem, where they say, well, my coach does this, my coach does that, blah, blah, blah. But I've seen it with all sorts of athletes. And I think that is one thing where some athletes that end up being more successful, they are usually the ones that just embrace the change, Okay, I did this at home, but here in the US, we're going to do it differently. And I ate this at home, but here in the US, they have different food and I'm going to embrace it and I'm going to find what I like and I'm going to deal with it. In Germany, we also don't eat hot dogs all the time and drink sodas all the time. We have our set of food. It's probably more like the US food than it is coming from Nigeria to US food. I get that. Winners, I feel like winners and successful people don't complain. They make it work, they embrace it, and it's fine to be sometimes dissatisfied and not like things. That's totally normal. But what I notice is the people that are most successful are the ones that, just have an open mind. They have positive spirit. They turn problems into positives and just find their way. If they don't have money, they're going to find a job that they like and work on campus. If they don't like the food, then they'll talk to their coach and talk about maybe getting an apartment with a kitchen or moving off campus next year. If they don't like the program, either they talk to their coach about it or they just open up to the new program. And that's one thing where I notice the people that just complain about it and just focus on the negatives, they're just bound to fail. And it doesn't matter if they're coming from Africa, or if they're coming from Europe or whatever. The ones that are successful are just the ones that, they're the smiling ones, they're the happy ones, they're the open-minded ones. And those just seem to do well, they focus on the important things. And it doesn't matter what life throws at them. There's so many people that I know, like, man, with all the shit that's happening to them, like, how are they doing it? I mean, you probably can think of a few people at this moment where you ask yourself, like, how are they doing it with everything that's happening to them? And they still make it work. And then others where you think, like, you have everything. How are you not doing it? And it's usually the people that just keep the positive mind that make it work. And one more thing that's also really important to me is, and that's something I preach to a lot of these athletes, is just because something works for one guy doesn't mean that this works for the other guy. Just because a certain program works for your friend and another friend and another friend doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I always preach, stay open-minded, never exclude a school, never exclude a coach just because you haven't heard of them or just because it didn't work for your friend. Just look at everything, talk to everyone. A lot of the Europeans or transfers get the opportunity to do visits. Visit 2-3 schools, talk to everyone, see what's up, and then make a decision. I've seen a lot of athletes that just come in and say, oh, I'm only going here, here, or here. Well, how do you know this even is going to work for you? You've never talked to anyone there. You've never trained with this coach a single day of your life. How do you know it's going to work? So I personally feel like open-mindedness is just the key to success in the NCAA, in my opinion. When you're there and even before you get there. You know, a lot of the Nigerian athletes are always like, oh, I want to go to, I don't know, I'm going to throw some name. I'm only going to Auburn, or I'm only going to LSU, or I'm only going to Alabama, or I'm only going to Texas Tech, whatever it may be. It's like, well, why? You know, just that might be the perfect spot, but it may not be. So look around, talk to everyone, because at the end of the day, it should be in everyone's interest that an athlete goes to a school that works for them. It goes the same for the schools. You know, just because an athlete is right now fast doesn't mean that this athlete is the perfect fit for the program. They need to do their homework. And that's something where I see a lot of coaches and a lot of athletes just assuming that one sport may be good for them or maybe not good for them without actually ever having a proper conversation to these coaches, you know. Or one thing that I see a lot too is making decisions just based on money. You know, just because a school pays $100 more doesn't mean that this is the right spot where you're going to be good. And, you know, there's a lot of money to be made even beyond graduation. If you do really, really good, you can be a professional athlete, whatever. So you shouldn't just look now where you're making the most money, but you should be thinking, where can I get the best value for myself, not just for the next 4 years, but for the next 40 years, you know, because you're also looking to graduate. And then for 99% of the people, the sports career ends the moment they graduate. So where can I study the thing that I want to study that gets me the job that I want to get? You know, for example, I don't know, if I get the opportunity to go to an absolute elite academic university, but they pay a little bit less nowadays, well, why don't I do that? Because that degree that I'm going to get there is going to pay for my next 35 years, and that's going to pay for my child's education, and that's going to pay for my house. And screw the $100 that I'm missing out every month on my stipend right now. And that's something, again, open-mindedness and just, you know, thinking about positive impacts that this could have. And I talked a lot now, but those are the main parts that I think are super, super important. Just being open to options.
Okay, so is there like a rule book or a guide to making these decisions for the athletes and also the coaches? Because I mean, it works, it's a two-way thing, it's vice versa, right? The athletes has all of these things in their head, and also the coaches also have all of these things in their head. So is there like a rule book you feel like, or are there like guidelines you would say, these are the things you want to look at, or these are the reality checks you as an athlete want to do, and these are the reality check you as a coach wants to also do before recruiting and before accepting a particular scholarship?
Yeah, so in my life, I've probably done consultations with over 2,000 athletes. And usually what I've noticed is that athletes usually divide their goals into 3 categories when they pick their school. Number 1 is, for many athletes, is athletics. Obviously, you know, they have athletic goals that they want to achieve. Number 2 for many is academics. Certain athletes want to go to the best academic program that they can get to. And number 3 is what I call like the experience or lifestyle component. You know, some athletes say, I want to go to Florida to the beach. You know, I want to have a school like that. So this is something when I meet with athletes the very first time, I'm asking them mostly, everyone always thinks that I'm going to talk a lot in those meetings, but actually I don't talk a lot. I just ask a lot of questions because I'm trying to understand what matters to this athlete. And then many times when the athlete is looking to make their decision, some of them come back to me and asking, hey, I'm being recruited by these schools, where should I go? And then I go back to my notes and I say, look, when we talked 6 months ago, you told me this, this, and this, and this is what matters to you. Is this still the case, or has anything changed ever since? And then some athletes say, yeah, I've thought about it and maybe something changed. Many say, no, it's all still the same. And I do the same when athletes go on recruiting visits. I tell the athletes, before you go on a recruiting visit, write down the things that really matter to you, the must-haves, and then, so a list of must-haves, a list of nice-to-haves. So the must-haves are the non-negotiables, the things I absolutely want to have, something like full scholarship, good team, whatever. Then the nice-to-haves, maybe a location or a specific major I want to do or whatever. And then the last one is the things that I absolutely don't want. So things that really turn me off. And then when you wrote the list, I ask them, you know, shut the book, put it away, go on your visit. And when you come back from the visits, you go back to this book and then you look at those things and you figure out, okay, which one of these schools matches which one of the categories. Because what I see with a lot of athletes, when they go on visits or when they are being recruited by schools, I like to say, you're not planning a vacation. You're planning your academic and athletic future. You shouldn't just decide where you're going based on location or where they have the most palm trees or where they pay the biggest stipend or whatever, There's a lot of things that come into play, and you should make your decision based on those things that really, really matter, and not just matter to you today or tomorrow, but that still matter in 10, 15, 20 years. And this is something that, especially for the athletes, that I wish more athletes would really do when they start the process, like really sit down and think, what do I want? What do I want? Where am I willing to kind of make some adjustments? And what are some things that are absolutely non-negotiables for me? And for coaches, this goes the same. A lot of coaches, in my opinion, just look at, okay, what's the PB of this guy? Is this guy going to score on my conference with current times? And I'm thinking to myself, look, dude, your title is coach. You're not a manager that is just trying to get athletes and make them run the same thing next year. Your job is to develop athletes. And that's something that I often see nowadays where coaches just recruit athletes and basically assume, okay, this is where they're going to be. But they tell me, well, this guy's PB won't even score in our conference. It's like, yeah, but he's 17 years old, Like you should be doing your job. You're at this point, you're a college coach. So you're working with juveniles, you're working with athletes that are 17, 18, 19 years old. Their PB today isn't going to be their PB in the next 2 to 3 years. So what are the things that matter to you as a coach? And this is something where I, for example, really have to give kudos to a few coaches that we work with that started, and I think they've made that mental switch over the years because they've seen how these athletes develop to where they think, okay, if I get an athlete that has a certain level of PBs, let's say the SEC, for example, I know it's a beast, SEC is a monster. So they have to have a certain level, of course. But when an athlete has a certain level, and they bring the attitude, and they have stability, and they have the height, and they have the build, then I'm willing to take a risk and bring an athlete that with his current PBs is not going to score, because I know if I coach them well, they're going to be those guys. If we're looking at, I don't know, let's say Ogazi or Ajay or Israel Okon, like those guys didn't have PBs that would be nationally relevant before they went to the NCAA, but the coaches saw something in them. They saw that they were young. They saw that they were talented. They saw that they had the right mindset. And then when they came to the US, they took the next step, and now they're national caliber athletes, and even Olympians. So this is something where I really see some coaches doing an exceptional job and others that could be doing a better job. Don't just look at what these guys have done right now. Really dig in and think, what can I do with these guys and where can I get them to in the next 3-4 years? Because again, they're so young. It doesn't matter what they do now. It matters what they do in the future. And yeah, this is something where I sometimes wish some coaches would have more of an open mind and would more see what's going to happen in the future and not just what happened the past season.
Okay, well, I would say that ScholarBook has been a huge pipeline to African athletes. And what would you say has been the most inspiring moment looking back at 3 years now and seeing how far or how much impact ScholarBook has made in Africa? Do you think is something that you are proud of? Do you think is something you want to do better? Do you think it's something you want to leave at where it is? Or do you feel like it's just not what you were looking out for?
So, I mean, everyone that works in a job, I think, is always thinking like, what's the greater impact of what I'm doing? And when people ask me personally, I think I'm the only person that has a job like this in the world. I don't think there is a job like this a second time in the world. So when someone asks me, what do you do for a living? I'm like, well, how much time do you have? Because I'm going to have to explain it to you. Because, I mean, it's not like, I can't say I'm a banker or I can't say I'm a lawyer or something. Like my job takes a little bit of explaining. I'm not a coach either. I'm not a manager either. I'm doing something very, very different. So that's pretty cool. But then when you also ask yourself, what kind of impact am I having with what I'm doing every day? With my job at the bank that I had, it was a well-paid job, but it's like, if I stop doing it tomorrow, nothing happens, nothing changes. The world's going to spin the same way, and everything is going to be the same. Now, I think with what I'm doing now, if I stop doing it tomorrow, I think a lot of things would actually change, and it would impact a lot of lives, because what we're doing here, we're running a business at ScholarBook. That's not a secret, but in our product and what we do, the beauty is that every person wins. We have three people or three parties that are involved in our process. We have us, we have the athletes, and we have the universities. And if we do a good job and we get the right people to the right universities, then everyone wins. And that's the beauty of it, and there's not many products like this out there in this world. And what adds another layer of beauty to our line of work is that, especially with our African athletes, and this is not just the African athletes, my life was also heavily impacted by going to the US. I met my wife, got 2 degrees, I had a scholarship, blah, 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 met lots of friends, whatever. So my life was very impacted, but I didn't come from poverty, quote unquote. I came from a relatively normal household from Europe. I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, relatively speaking, compared to what African athletes grow up in. Most of them, or a lot of them, face financial struggles that before I started working with them, I had no idea people were facing in this world. Yeah, you hear all these stories about people in Africa not having a lot of money and so forth. Experience it firsthand, and traveling to these countries, meeting these people, talking to these people, that was pretty eye-opening to me, to be honest. I traveled to Nigeria, I saw how people lived and trained, and the story of Ajay commuting 3 hours to practice every single day, and 3 hours there and 3 hours home. I was like, what the heck? Like, do people do that? And he still runs 10.2? How's that even possible? We'll get that guy to the US, he's going to run sub 10. Guess what? He just did. So that was the idea that we had at the time. And then obviously the beauty of having changed the lives of 200 athletes. And then think about it. 200 athletes have 400 parents. They have 800 grandparents. They're going to have, I don't know how many children, and their children are going to have children. And all of their lives are going to be very, very different because of what we did with them and the coaches in these past 3 years, and what we're going to continue to do. And yes, it's paying my bills, and it's helping me to earn a living, but it also changes their lives. It changes their families' lives. It changes the coach's life. We're also making coaching careers here. The coaches are who they are today because of the athletes they managed to recruit with our help. So I think that's a really, really cool piece. And then, of course, you have these really, really nice and touching individual stories. One of my favorites being the one, for example, of one of our athletes, Sam, who's been trying to go to the US since 2019. He's tried and tried. I think he has had eight interviews by now. He was famous in Nigeria for being the guy who never gets a visa. Funny story, by now he has prepared nearly 100 athletes for their visa interview. He's not going to the Auburns and to Alabama. We didn't help him get to the US because we were making any money off of helping him. But I wanted to get it done for him because I think he's a great guy. And he's too smart and he's too nice, and he should not be dwelling his life in Nigeria. I personally thought he was meant for more. And there's a lot of these athletes where we made decisions and helped them in ways that were not financially beneficial for ScholarBook, where we didn't make money by getting them to the US, but in fact we lost a lot of money. But myself and the CEOs of ScholarBook thought, okay, this person deserves it. They're great athletes, or they're great students, or they're just super, super nice. And yeah, we're gonna lose money by doing this, but we're still going to fly them to this crazy country to get them the visa. We're still going to apply for a 4th time because we just think they deserve it, and they should do it. And yeah, you win battles, you lose battles, but there is a lot of these stories that I find really, really inspiring, and looking at it, sometimes I have these certain characters that I meet over the years. I mean, you obviously being one of them, and then a lot of other athletes that I've worked with. I had a Kenyan athlete live at my apartment for 3 weeks one time, and we did 4 or 5 visa interviews for him over the course of 2 or 3 months. And it was to a point where, like, okay, we're just going to throw money at it and just try to make it work, because we all loved him and we thought he deserved a chance. And now he's in the US. He's one of the best runners currently. And that's maybe a part that people don't know. And, sometimes people say, oh, ScholarBook, they're just in it for the money and blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? I could be doing other jobs and earn a lot more money, but they wouldn't be as fulfilling as what I'm doing now. And the same goes for the CEOs of ScholarBook. They're really bright people. They're very well connected, and we could be doing other things, but this is what we're passionate about. And this is where we think we can make a really, really big impact. And that's why we keep doing it. And this has, for me personally, been the most rewarding experience working with these African athletes, when I now see not just how fast they're running, but also how happy they are, how they're transforming. Maybe this is something that you've also noticed. You take an athlete and you just look at them before they go to the US, the way they carry themselves, the way they dress, the way they do their hair, all of these things. And then you fast forward 2 years later and you see them, and the glow up is like, they're different people. And this is, for me, the most beautiful thing to watch. For example, I'm just thinking our girl Doris Lemgoli, runner. When we first met her, she was this shy, quiet girl from Kenya that wouldn't say a word, that her English was kind of choppy and whatnot. And now she's an NCAA superstar, has broken multiple records. You look at her smile is like so bright, and she just looks so happy, and she looks like a beautiful young lady, and she's giving interviews, and she's nominated for the Bowerman Trophy and so forth. If we had not done what we did, she wouldn't be who she is today. She would have probably been a good runner in Kenya, but this personal development, she was voted the SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year last year. I mean, think about it. Like, this is this young girl from a small village in Kenya, out in the boondocks, middle of nowhere, even for Kenyan standards. And now she's an NCAA superstar. She's a 4.0 student. She's a young lady that dresses nice, looks nice, carries herself with confidence. And this is beyond running fast. For me, the nicest thing to watch, and seeing how people develop, how their humor develops, how their confidence develops, how they develop as people, that for me actually matters the most personally. Yeah, I love to see them run fast, but personally, the messages that I am the most happy about is, yeah, I was voted on the dean's list, or, I'm super happy I'm able now to help my family financially and everyone is doing well, or I'm buying my mom's medicine now, and all of those things. That's personally what I find the most rewarding.
I must say, working at ScholarBook has been an inspiration on my own end. I mean, I love my job, and just being able to give back to the world is something that, no matter how much you're being paid for, or you're being paid, that cannot amount to just knowing that you can make someone's life better. But said something, and I know that this has been a back and forth issue when it comes to the area of money, right? And yes, a lot of persons want to know, how does ScholarBook make their money? A lot of persons are like, how is it that for African athletes, they are not being charged? Not like they want to be charged, but, curiosity, they say. Some people are just, would I call it, intentionally curious, or just trying to be nosy. But aside from that, it's like, okay, so how do they make their money? Are we being scammed? Are they taking so much from the coaches? Some persons went as far as saying that their stipends are being cut into two, half being given to ScholarBook every month and half being given to the athletes. Some persons are like, okay, there's a particular amount that is being paid to ScholarBook for each athlete. So it is one athlete per payment. And I know that for the NCAA rules, paying for athletes is illegal. So exactly. I want you to please clarify and clear the air. What exactly happens in ScholarBook? Are these athletes paid for per head? It was also said that when they get to the United States, they are meant to reimburse back everything that has been paid for them and all of that. So it would be nice if you clear this air, because I'm sure that my viewers too are eager and they want to hear from the horse's mouth.
Yeah. First of all, the whole paying per head and all of that, that's absolutely not permitted in the NCAA. So what is legal is that coaches can sign up for a recruiting service, and this can be ScholarBook or any recruiting service out there. We're not the only one. And what is very, very important is that we provide the information. So when an athlete signs up to us, we provide the information about this athlete to all subscribing universities. And this is the reason why all of our athletes, not all of them, it kind of depends on how good they are and how much interest they generate, but almost all of our athletes get multiple offers, and the best ones, they're going to be recruited by all sorts of schools. And the reason behind it is we have to provide the information about the athlete to all of these schools. And we never promise a school a certain athlete. That's also not legal. So when a coach says, well, how come I didn't get this athlete, or how come I didn't get that athlete? Because we simply cannot, within the NCAA rules, do that. So any coach that signs up for our recruiting service, they need to recruit just like any other coach would also recruit. But the difference is that within our recruiting service, the athletes that are part of this are only being basically shown or promoted to schools that are signed up for it. And we have nearly 70 schools by now that are signed up for a recruiting service, from junior colleges and NAI schools and D2 schools and smaller D1 schools and big D1 schools as well. And they can pick what they want to sign up for. Do they want to recruit mostly, let's say, long distance runners, or mostly European athletes, or whatever? They decide what they want to do. And then they get to see all the athletes within that particular area that they sign up. And really good recruiters, coaches, end up signing 3, 4, 5 athletes every year, because they make really good use of it, and they message every single athlete that they like. And other schools that are not very active and struggle even signing one athlete, and some athletes come to us and say, hey, I want to go to this particular school. And we still send their profile to all schools that sign up. They can still pick to choose this one particular school that they liked from day one. But who knows, maybe they'll change their mind and they want to go somewhere else. So long story short, we don't charge per head. This is illegal. This would make us agents, and we're not doing that. And also another rule in the NCAA is we cannot dip in, or how do we call this? What's the best way to put it? We cannot take scholarship money from the athletes away. We cannot say, hey, you go into this school, but we're going to take half of your scholarship. That also for a recruiting service is illegal. And actually, in many cases, we have to declare to the university. Basically, the question is our payment of ScholarBook contingent on the scholarship of the athlete? It basically says, in other words, do we charge a certain percentage on the scholarship of the athlete, which is illegal? No, we cannot. We have to charge all athletes the same thing. So, one contract that we offer for one athlete, or to one athlete, we need to offer the next athlete the same thing. And that's what we do. Our contracts at ScholarBook are super transparent. If you hit certain standards, you get certain conditions. And if you don't hit the standards, then you don't qualify for that program. And that's what makes it able for us to work with the athletes the way we do. And if there's certain things that go beyond that, let's say an athlete, we've had cases where an athlete could absolutely not pay for their flights and so forth, then we could loan them this money, but then the expectation would be that they pay it back to us, because our job is not to buy flight tickets. If they negotiate that with the coaches, that's fine. But our job is to get them to the US. In a way of to get them the scholarship and the visa, not to buy them the plane ticket. So we've had situations where we did ask athletes to repay that money that they borrowed.
The money.
Exactly. But nothing beyond that.
Now, let me get this part really clear. So those persons who come to ScholarBook to request for funds or apply for funds just so they can get their flight ticket, these are athletes who get into schools that do not pay flight ticket, right?
Exactly.
So it's expected that, I borrowed money from you, so I'm meant to pay back what I borrowed.
Exactly. And think about it. I mean, this is absolutely not our responsibility. The fact that we do that is just because we know how difficult it is for athletes. I know how much it means to figure out how to get $1,500 to get from Lagos to, I don't know, Kansas State or whatever. It's a lot of money and it's not easy. Yeah. And I know how many months or years the parents would probably have to save to get that or borrow from some loan shark or whatever. So I, in certain cases, have decided to lend athletes that, but the expectation has always been that they pay it back. However, we've learned also from the past, and we know that, for most Nigerian athletes, it's very, very difficult, or also for the Kenyan athletes, for example, it's very difficult to get that money together. So when we talk to coaches, we usually tell them, hey, if you are planning to recruit Nigerian athletes, you better have the plan to also pay for their plane ticket, because most of them are not going to be able to afford it. So this has actually also become pretty common that these schools, even mid-majors, started paying for the plane ticket. Not all of them do it.
Yeah.
Some can't do it. Some don't want to do it because it also opens Pandora's box. If you do it for one, then the next 5 also expect it. But we always want to make sure that our athletes get taken care of as good as possible or the best possible. So we always negotiate for them as much as we can. And our athlete managers have managed to negotiate lots of plane tickets for African athletes in the past.
Okay, talking about taking care of the athletes. So what happens in cases where athletes ends up in a program that maybe they are facing challenges, especially from the coach? Now, this is a situation where the athlete is actually good at what he or she does and is showing up and doing what he or she is meant to do. But it's sometimes always doesn't come out as perfect as expected. In situations like that, what exactly do ScholarBook do? Because I've had a few athletes reach out to me and say, oh, we want this to be done, we want that to be done, but nobody's saying anything to me, nobody's saying this, nobody's saying that. Yeah, and this question is going to bring me to my next question now, which has to do with the athlete managers.
One thing that I've noticed, and I think it's a cultural thing, to be honest, but a lot of African athletes do not speak their minds to the coaches. They shy away from these uncomfortable situations, and not all of them. Some are very open about it. But when it comes to certain things like finances or, I don't know, not liking their roommates or whatever, a lot of them just eat it up and get more and more frustrated. And then suddenly they text us and was like, oh, I hate it here, I want to transfer. And then we talk about why. And then more times than not, those issues could have been addressed from the first day on. And again, this has been a huge learning curve for us. So for example, when we help an athlete from Africa, especially from Nigeria and Kenya, to go to the US, we always try to make sure that from day one they can live off campus, have an apartment with their own kitchen so that they can cook their own food, and they get their monthly refund and get to buy their phone bill and maybe send, even if it's just a small amount, send some money home and so forth, which seems to be, and this is something I never thought about beforehand, is much more appreciated than living on campus, eating in the dining hall. A lot of the African athletes seem to really struggle with that. I had no idea at first that this even was an issue, right? Because, I came from Germany. It was like, okay, I live in an apartment and I'm going to eat the dining hall. So yeah, so what? But for the African athlete, that actually is a huge problem. And I get it now. You don't have money for hygiene products. You don't have money to buy your phone plan. You want to send something home because your parents sometimes appreciate it or sometimes expect you to. Who knows, And so this is one thing that our athlete managers, I think, have done a really, really good job in, is to work with coaches on having better setups in these universities, being able to go off campus from year one, or maybe at least getting an on-campus apartment with a kitchen and not having to eat in the dining hall, or explaining them how taxes work. A lot of the African athletes had never had anything to do with taxes. So we've had situations where athletes were charged taxes and they're like, oh my God, why? And what is this?
And that was one thing I was really worried about.
Yeah, it's been a problem. And it even got so far to where athletes were saying that we were taking that money. It was like, what? No, we're not charging taxes. Go complain with the US government. This is nothing that we're doing. And so, we learned over the years that, we have to sit down and we have to present them the information in a certain way and explain things in a certain way. And this has really reduced the amount of complaints we're getting from athletes about how happy or unhappy they are. Just having these conversations with the coaches before the athletes even got there. And this is probably a good advice that I have for the athletes, is just talk to your coaches. Your coaches can, certain things they can change, some things they cannot change, but they're always going to try. And before you start hitting them with the, I'm going to transfer, maybe have a conversation with them about what's bothering you, and do it rather sooner than later, and don't bottle it all up. And also, some athletes come to us, and we try to support them as much as we can. At certain schools, we cannot change the complete setup. Some schools just have a setup, and that's how it's going to be. And we can try to maneuver it, but maybe not in a perfect way. But this is a big advice for athletes that are unhappy in certain situations. Before you think about transferring, because transferring might be tempting, but a transfer comes with change, and change can be good, but it can also be bad. It doesn't mean that the new school you're going to is going to be better. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So talk to your coach, communicate, be open about the things you like, but also about the things you don't like. And then a lot of problems can be solved before they become problems.
Okay, Mr. Philipp, that would be noted. Last week, there was something you mentioned to me while we were having a conversation, which happens to be the NIL deals. And that is something ScholarBook is looking to start doing for our athletes. So I would like you to throw more light on that topic.
Yeah. So in fact, actually, we're currently drafting up an NIL contract with a US lawyer. So we're in the process of, before you start representing athletes, you need to have a proper contract. So we're actually in the process of getting that done right now. And yeah, I mean, it's always been, so until recent years, it's always been like, okay, you're in college, you get your scholarship, and that's what it is. And when you graduate, you go professional, then you can make an additional contract.
Yeah.
But now with the NIL contracts, so NIL stands for name, image, and likeliness. It means basically you get an athlete for not how fast you run, but for how popular you are. And of course, you're popular because you run fast, and you're looking to be even more popular. But an NIL contract doesn't say you run this time and you get this money. An NIL contract is more like, hey, because of how good of an athlete you are, you have certain value because of your name, your image, and your likeliness. So it's basically like an influencer contract. You're like a brand ambassador. You represent a brand because of who you are, and athletes can benefit from that now in college. So they can sign contracts with different brands. That could be the local car dealership, or it could be Adidas or Nike or whatever. And it could be food supplement brands and whatnot. And they can be compensated for it. And we see it with a lot of our athletes, that especially the African athletes, and it seems like especially the Nigerian athletes, often get overlooked because, I mean, if we're being fully honest, sports in Nigeria does not always have the best image. I've had conversations, for example, with Puma. They used to sponsor the Nigerian national team, and they didn't have the best experiences. So now Puma is like not working with that anymore. So now it's become very, very difficult for these athletes, even that are in the US, that are very popular, very fast, have good intentions, to gain access to contracts. And we think that with our connections that we have through the work that we've done in the years. I mean, I've worked for Adidas, and Simon, one of our two CEOs, he's the meet director of one of the biggest track and field competitions in Germany, where he's working with different brands and so forth. We have these connections that we think we can help the athletes when they have a minimum level. Obviously, they need to be extremely fast. That's how it is. And we can help them to get contracts. And that's what we're working on right now. Because obviously we would love for many of our athletes to become professional athletes down the road. And this doesn't just go for African athletes, this also goes for European athletes. One of our guys, for example, Till, he's a German decathlete. He just won a bronze medal at the Indo-European and World Championships in the indoor heptathlon. He doesn't have a contract either. How is that? He's world class. So we're trying to help him with that now, to gain a contract right now, an NIL contract. And then hopefully this NIL contract with a certain brand is going to lead to a professional contract for him once he graduates. And that's our plan that we're looking to do. Obviously, again, we're a business, and if we're an NIL agent, obviously we're going to charge a commission for our work. It's a charity company, we're a business, but still, even if we charge a certain commission on the contract that we got the athlete still gets more money than if they never had a contract in the first place. So still, again, everyone wins. We make some money, they gain a contract, they make money, hopefully gain a professional contract out of it once they graduate. At the end of the day, again, it's a business, but everyone benefits from it.
So what happens to athletes who at the end of the day maybe don't have those times, maybe are not, they are good where they are, but maybe not to that professional level. Academically, they are fine. Maybe they have other things going on with them. What happens to people like that? So is it going to be a thing of we're done? You look for what to do with your life, or is there something for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously also funny story or interesting side fact probably about 75%, I would say, of all people that work at ScholarBook were former ScholarBook athletes. Myself included, obviously, various people in my team, so that's obviously one thing. We're always looking for special people that we can not only work with on their way to the US, but also, maybe they'll become part of the team down the road. If we're being fully realistic, 99% of all collegiate athletes, it depends on the sport, but right around 99% for them, they will not have a professional sports career after they graduate. It's just a fact. It's just statistics.
Most definitely.
Yeah. For the Nigerians and maybe also the Kenyans, it might be slightly different because, I mean, those athletes that work with us are top of the crop. So, they are probably more likely than the average athlete to be a professional. But the reality is most of them will not. And most of them are going to graduate and are going to go about their regular lives. So my recommendation is once you start being a junior or a sophomore, junior year, start thinking, what's my plan beyond sports? There's many opportunities at US universities that go beyond sport. For example, there's always career fairs, there's on-campus jobs, there's summer internships. And of course, always be careful with your visa guidelines, as a F1 student visa holder, there's rules that you have to abide by, and you can't just work any job. You have to follow those rules given by the US government. But there's still great opportunities for internships, for on-campus jobs. And I think every student athlete should do this regardless where they're from. They should network, they should do internships, they should grow their personal network, professional network. And between practices, go take your nap, but also think about, okay, what else can I do? Can I go to career fairs? Can I build my resume? Can I acquire skills that are going to help me down the road? And this is something that I hope a lot of these athletes will do, because my hopes are that one day they're going to return to their home countries and are going to be really, really productive members of their society and can maybe help to make the home country become a better place through the skills and through the knowledge that they have acquired, because they are in a very unique position now. Having a foreign education is a very, very good thing in any country you go to. It doesn't matter if you go with a US degree to Germany or if you go with a US degree to Nigeria, it's always going to be beneficial. So I'm hoping that many of them down the road are going to be coaches, administrators, maybe working in finance, maybe become doctors, maybe become lawyers, nurses, who knows? But I'm really hoping that they're thinking beyond, like the name of your nice podcast title, that they're thinking beyond the finish line and beyond.
I know. Oh, Mr. Philip, I have so many questions for you, but time would fail me. You have lived so many lives: an athlete, an entrepreneur, a mentor, a husband. If there's one word that has carried you or a mantra that you have held on to over the years, what would it be?
Yeah, it's probably not a word, but it's probably good to call it a mantra. One thing, when I think about what helped me be successful and makes me good at this job and helped me to build the thing that we're doing today, is that I think the athletes, the coaches, or anyone that we work with, is that they notice that we really care. And, I don't know if you still remember lots of things that you and I did when you first were introduced to me. That was like November 2022. We were texting like late at night because you had your visa interview upcoming and those type of things. And, I didn't have to do that, but I cared, I wanted you to be successful and I wanted you to get your visa and to go to the US. You didn't even go to one of our partner schools. Like, I had no incentive in helping you, but I still cared. I could tell from day one that you were super ambitious and had the right had the right values and had the right drive. So I thought I wanted to help you. And when we work with athletes, and I prepared until last year, I prepared so many athletes for the visa appointment myself. And then I get the phone call and my heart is racing and I don't know if it went good or bad. And they told me it went good. And, it also fills me with joy, and we're all laughing together and we're all happy together. And I think when the athletes feel that not me and my staff and everyone really cares, and the coaches notice that we care, I think that really made the difference. So that's one thing that I feel like sets us apart. It's not just that, we care for how much money we make or we care for how fast someone is, but it's really about like, what does this mean for this particular person? What does this mean for this particular coach and so forth? And showing them that you really have their best interest in mind and not following some secret hidden agenda. I think that really makes the difference in the long term.
Okay, Mr. Philipp, we're going to take that. For the athlete who is about to give up, for that coach who is probably doubting what he does, and for that parent who is unsure of what happens next with his or her kid, what would be your advice to them?
Something that I wish some people or more people would do is simply take the next step. Write the next message, make the next call, give it a shot, try your luck. I think a lot of people often focus so much on the problem at hand that they forget to think about, where could this lead to? Is there something for me to gain out of this? That's maybe one thing that I would advise people. Like, I don't know, I'm going to take my personal example. When I was injured as a professional athlete, I could have just sat at home and cried about it. But I thought, well, I have a lot of time on my hands, so I'm going to start a business and I'm going to read a lot. And that has led to more things, that has led to me or to new doors opening up. And I think that's probably one thing that I could recommend to people when there is problems. Don't focus on them too much. Just see what can happen next. Is there an alternative? Let's just see what happens. I'm going to try my luck. Shoot your shot. There's this one cheesy saying that says, you can't make the shots you don't take, or something like that. So I think that's pretty fitting. Just go do something. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Thank you, Mr. Philipp. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's been an interesting and an educative episode with you. And for those who must be wondering, we've been going back and forth with, yes, I work with ScholarBook. Yes, I have had the opportunity to do this amazing job for over 2 years now and counting. And I'm looking forward to doing more. This is something I love to do, just being in that place where you can give back to the society and just, share the knowledge you have, be that person that changes people's lives, be that person who you see something in someone and you're like, you've got this. You've got this. When I look back at the athletes who I have recruited, it's like, my God, see them going to the Olympics, see them doing good at the NCAA. It's like, okay, that's my athletes.
Exactly.
So it's, I would say it's one that as humans, these are the things you want to put into consideration when picking a job. I'm not asking you to come and work at ScholarBook, but what I'm trying to say in essence is it's not just all about the money. It's also looking back at how much you've impacted into the world. It's just knowing that somebody out there has a better life because you walked in.
Exactly.
And that's what ScholarBook is all about. For all those of you saying this and saying that, we'll talk about that next time. And come to the end of this episode. I still remain your host, Star Mpama. Until we meet again, be good, stay safe, and bye for now. Ciao!